Social media is dead. Twitter, dead. Facebook, dead. Blue Sky, a baby. Pigeon Carrier? Wait a second, let's cook on that. We're making a new Turnip Boy game, and it's gonna be free. We wanna make something to give back to our fans and help promote our newsletter. No matter where social media goes, we wanna make sure we have y'all on speed dial, so we're going all in on emails. Enough clickbait buzzwords, let's get into the Hi everyone, I'm Yukon Wainzak, and for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm the owner of Snoozy Kazoo, the game studio behind the silly little Turnip Boy franchise. We recently announced a new game called Turnip Boy Steals the Mail. In this game, you follow Turnip Boy and their kidnapper Velvet on a journey to steal as much mail as you can. To anyone with knowledge of the Turnip Boy series, you'll notice that Steals the Mail is a very different type of game than the others, and that's because it's a spin-off. We wanted to make a very small project that doesn't interfere with Hobnobber's development while giving people an IV drip with their favorite gender-fluid femboy.
Side note, you should go wishlist Hobnobbers. We're working a ton on it behind the scenes. And trust me, you're gonna want to see what we got cooking.
Anyways, why exactly are we making this game? And why is it free? These are questions that I will now answer. It all begins back when elongated muskrat purchased Twitter and ran it over with his ugly ass Cybertruck until everything about it was absolutely ruined. We over at extremely gay company Snoozy Kazoo became increasingly worried about our social media presence, as Twitter was the platform we sunk most our time and energy into. We got a little spooked about losing access to our fans, as people were rightfully deleting their accounts en masse. To push this effort, we wanted to create a game that we can throw a ton of extra newsletter exclusive content in. We decided to jump deep in the mail theme and start developing Turnip Boy Steals the Mail. It also made sense for us, as Snoozy Kazoo has been swapping engines forever, and we wanted to test out Godot and get involved with the community around it. So developing a bite-sized game is a great test. We also were interested in participating in GodotCon, but more on that later. We figured we would create a small infinite runner, as they are relatively easy to create, fun to make content for, and pretty much infinitely expandable. This direction would also let us learn all the fundamentals we needed to develop our future games in Godot. At this point, we had a bunch of loose ideas, but how was this thing even gonna work? It was time to crack down the design of this before we got too ahead of ourselves. There were some obvious things we figured out from the get-go. Given that this is a game about stealing mail, Turnip Boy would be the player character and collect mail as he runs along. The big question was, how do we make this have a narrative? We decided to break the game up into separate chapters, which take the form of zones. Within these zones, we have levels. Most of them have introduction dialogue, ending dialogue, and maybe a character or two that you can bump into while running. This being said, we do want to appeal to the hashtag sweats in the community, so we decided to include infinite modes for each zone, so you can chase high scores after you were done absorbing our corny writing. And last but not least, we needed some type of out-of-game progression, and hats felt like a pretty good fit for that. You can collect them from a gacha system that uses exclusively earnable in-game currency and swap out their badges and pins, which act like perks. Now that we have the design, we wanted to figure out how to tie this into our newsletter. We eventually came up with the plan to release the game including the first 3 chapters for free on Steam, and then release exclusive content through little mystery gift codes that we will shoot out through our newsletter. These can range from free hats like the mailbox hat, which is the first drop we have planned, to full zones with entire stories, including some sick crossovers. Alright, since now we had an idea, I decided to hunt around for some type of deadline to have a vertical slice for. Since we're using Godot, GodotCon Boston was a natural fit, and after submitting a write-up and a few early screenshots, we got in. It was then that I realized that I must be some type of sick f***ing masochist, since we only had about 4 months to develop a demo. I sped ran learning as much as I could about Godot. I ended up binging a ton of YouTube tutorials until I felt confident enough to make the game. I also had to do some digging to learn how to properly communicate to my artists how to produce art assets that I could actually use in-engine. As like any engine, there are specific requirements to sprite resolution, file types, etc. It was a lot but extremely rewarding, because I have really struggled to make any engine stick for a while now, and Godot just felt right. My biggest challenge was the f***ing dialogue system, as UI in Godot is a little wonky to my Unity-pilled brain. Carto's Godot Control Node Masterclass ended up teaching me a lot, which was enough for me to build a slightly updated version of the classic Turnip Boy dialogue system that works with localization, sprite portraits, and text effects. Other than that, development was pretty smooth. Most things in Godot just make sense. If you need a specific functionality, chances are there's a node for it, and if not, it's easy to just add your own. Speaking of adding our own stuff, I wanted to use this project as a stepping stone for our future games by developing strong core tools, so I started wrapping them in a plugin called Blanket. This means that systems like file saving, scene loading with smooth transitions, UI modals, and any shared system we develop in the future all work independently of the game, meaning we can yank them out and throw them into our next game, and the game after that. In the spirit of Godot being open source, I decided to do the same for Blanket, and release the code on GitHub. Right now there isn't much up, but after Turnip Boy Steals the Mail releases, we plan to polish Blanket up and release all the tools we built for free so y'all can use them in your games too. Anyways, I'm sure my squad of dorks have a few things to add. Let's go over to them now.
So while I've mostly been cranking away at Hobnobbers, I jumped in super last minute to help Yukon with level design. Okay, so only one little problem with that. I've never touched Godot ever in my life. Like, how the hell was I supposed to figure this out in such little time? However, I've heard that Godot was pretty beginner friendly, so although I was a little hesitant, I knew I could probably figure it out with enough time and support. While Yukon was helping set up a little space for me to play around in, literally named Pearl World, I began concepting levels. I ended up making these silly little printouts so I could knock them out as fast as possible with pens and markers. Found this pretty enjoyable overall. They kind of look like an alien language when all lined up together. Oh, and printing them out was kind of funny. Turns out I accidentally used a very high-res image, so the printer was painstakingly laying every pixel down like a grain of sand. Glad I didn't send the printer to an early grave. While designing the levels, I was doing my best to conjure up trauma from my old Cookie Run oven break era. I used to spend so much time and money on that game to the point where I feel like their level design is burned into my retinas. I think what really drew me into the genre as a whole was my love of Bit Trip Runner on the Wii when I was little. While it would take me years to actually buy the game physically, I used to delete and replay the demo over and over and over from the eShop. There was something so satisfying about finishing a level without any mistakes. Okay, time for implementation. Shockingly, it was fine. I actually had tons of fun putting in the levels and arranging things just perfect so that I could make it as satisfying as possible. Jumping into layered mail just sounded so crispy, like a good crunch, and I just had a lot of fun finding different ways to make it better and better. Overall, I think we had probably around 7 chunks implemented into our demo, including a tutorial. Next, we had Yukon's brother test out a very early version and noticed he did not immediately understand the controls, so why not write them in the level themselves? During GodotCon, I got to attend a few seminars and I met a lot of really cool people. Most of the Snoozy devs live pretty far apart, so my favorite thing is always seeing most of the team together in one place. We ate lots of good meals and walked the streets of Boston. I happened to bring my printout camera for the trip too, so I was able to take a lot of good photos for journaling. One of my favorites? A full pizza sitting and abandoned solemnly in the rain. We couldn't stop laughing, and I almost wanted to pick up a slice.
It's always weird coming back to making Turnip Boy music after some time away. The earliest Turnip Boy music was written when I was a lot younger and in a completely different space musically. And since those first steps into making game music, I've made a ton of different stuff in various styles. Over time, I've become a lot more picky about what I want to make and what I try to communicate with each song. Turnip Boy Steals Mail is interesting because the game's linear like Commits Tax Evasion and high action like Robs a Bank, so the atmosphere I'm working on is landing somewhere in between. This time around, the gameplay is pretty fast, so I want to keep the tempo high, use fills, call and response, breakdowns and builds, all sorts of composition tricks to hint that the song is always moving somewhere new. I try to make music that goes hand in hand with each game's art and mechanics to create a cohesive vibe, and the music of Steals Mail has a decidedly forward momentum sound to it, even at this early state of development. My goal is to make the player feel naturally pulled forward through each run. I produce music in Ableton Live 12, and my background is mostly electronic music, dance, and pop, so the workflow of Ableton helps me iterate quickly and hone in on each song's particular feel within those styles. Over the years, I've found that listening to tons of music from all over the world, being out in nature, playing games, and talking with friends makes it easier for me to compose new and exciting music. Overall, I'm really pumped to be making more Turnip Boy's signature genre of hyper bluegrass world-influenced vegetable crimecore, or in simpler terms, whatever weird shit Yukon needs me to make next.
Hello, I am Kiki. This is my first time showing my digital face in a Snoozy video, but so long as this isn't your first Snoozy exposure, you've likely seen my work around. I'm the marketing guy, but I also do a lot of artwork for the team. I am currently in charge of all the video editing and draw the little PNG tubers everyone on the team has. My fingerprint is always around. It's nice to meet you. Turnip Boy Steals the Mail is my first time working as an artist for a big boy company game, so I was pretty nervous from the get-go. And then I was tasked with designing an emo cake girl. Gulp. I've got a lot of experience with designing cute humanoid anime girls, but critters, food folk, a lot less so. I was definitely nervous. I did one main iteration of her design with some slight variations, giving her a very short and stout look, and while I liked it, it definitely didn't feel as strong as it could have been. I got advice from fellow team members to push Velvet's shapes. I was encouraged to split the design up into 3 parts, changing the sizing and positioning of each part to create different silhouettes, and seeing what I could make from there. Although this was pretty simple advice, it really helped me push the design in an easy to understand way. Through this iterative process, I was able to test out a lot of different ideas. Velvet's legs were originally super short and stubby, and she didn't have a drippy icing ponytail at all. But out of all the options I came up with, the rest of the team really enjoyed the idea, so we stuck with it. I'm really happy with how Velvet's design came out, especially considering it was my first try at making a more creature-esque character design. Based on some of the comments I've seen on Reddit, I think you guys are happy with her too. I hope you enjoy her and all of her emo-isms when the game comes out. Thank you!
We announced the game the day before the event, with a trailer that was finished the night leading up to it. Most of Snoozy Kazoo was sound asleep when the announcement went live, so we woke up to a ton of excitement on all of our socials. We ended up spending most of that day just soaking it in and responding to people, and then we promptly drove into Boston to get settled at our Airbnb. All that was left was to set up the booth and get the final build ready to go and running on our booth machine. We drove all our stuff over the next morning and set up the booth. It was then that I realized that I forgot the buttons we made for the event at home, along with Pearl and I's PAX tickets. Since PAX East was right after GodotCon, we decided to chain the events together, so this was a very big problem. PAX won't reissue badges unless you destroy the old ones, so I ended up having to make a fucking 3-hour round-trip drive to go and pick everything up from home. Once I got back, we had some amazing hot pot, and then we all passed the fuck out. After we woke up the next day, everything became a wonderful blur as the convention started. We got a ton of great feedback, met a ton of amazing people, and bought a ton of Godot swag. I ended up pushing about 12 updates to the game through the entire show, including slowing down Turnip Boy's running speed down quite a bit since we realized how fucking sweaty we got after playing it for 4 months straight. There was only one major bug that caused the build to crash on the second playthrough, but it was an easy fix and we ironed it out 15 minutes after we found it. GodotCon was flat out the most fun I ever had at a game dev event. Everyone there was really excited about just sharing their work, and I heard so much excitement about where the engine is heading. It also helps that the event staff were super friendly and very vigilant at making sure everyone was having fun and being respected. The team at Snoozy has come to adore the Godot engine and the community around it, which has led us to believe that we have finally found an engine to call home. Now that we are all caught up, I can confidently say that we have no idea when this game will come out for real. Soon, probably. We'll release another devlog after it does, so be excited for that too. If you want to know when it releases as soon as it does, subscribe to our newsletter. As soon as the game launches, you'll get an email, and shortly after that, you'll get a code for the mailbox out. Wowie! Anyways, it's time for me to enter a deep coma to recover from that 4-month sprint. Peace out, dorks.